Welcome to the Humanist Podcast. I'm your host, Ken Stearns. Join us on a journey where we unravel the intricacies of workplace dynamics. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the Humanist Podcast. I'm your host, Ken Stearns. We're kind of in that pursuit of flourishing mode. I feel a little bit more of, waking up today, having a busy morning. I already feel like I'm in pursuit of something, or something is in pursuit of me. Not quite sure how that works sometimes. If I'm running and I'm pursuing something, I might be chasing my own tail around the globe. And I hope, hope sometimes we can take a big, deep breath and, just take in the moment and kind of be present. Reminds me of a little story real quick. And I woke up early the other morning and came out of the bedroom and sat down to the computer, just playing around. Very quiet house, staying with my daughter and with the grandkids right now. And little pitter patter of feet. And now came the 4-year-old in the darkness of morning. And she just, has a little asthma and was just a little caught out of breath, just, wanting, just trying to catch her breath, and a little bit of a panic mode, and just being able to sit with her and kind of coach her into some deep breaths and, think about the birds coming up and waking up and stretching their wings, and, let's just calm down and take a deep breath and, take a breath with Papa. And just before you know it, the hyper pants gone, and, stands up and stretches and, okay, let's go get some cereal. It doesn't take long. So, the power of breath and the power of being intentional, it's a real thing. Paul,
Indeed.
Welcome to the show. Paul Adams, really appreciate you taking some time out.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I love, as you're kicking off and talking about the breath work, I remember when I was younger years ago, went to something called SEAL Fit 20X, which just picture 12 hours of former Navy SEALs running you into the ground.
Sounds like fun.
And one of the things they taught us is like, hey, you can agitate yourself just with your own breathing. And they taught us, control your breath, control yourself, control the situation, control everything. And that's what I had my kids learn, to be able to breathe in between each one of those statements. Deep breath in, out, and then the next statement. So control your breath, control yourself, control the situation, control everything. And it puts them back in the driver's seat in their own mind. So I love that. And I love it I'm a little different. I was doing that with a 4-year-old. The bird stretching their wings probably would have been a better idea.
Yeah. You're going to control the environment, control yourself, control the world.
The bird stretches his wings. Does he look relaxed? I'm going to go with that next time I'm with a 4-year-old. But my kids are already used to me.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, they're already acclimated or scarred. One or the other one.
Every now and then something happens, and you go, "Well, good thing I'm paying for college and therapy." So,
it's a real thing. I think in the breath work, right? In the idea of being able to really control yourself. And that's, Paul, that's all we can control. We can't control the environment, what people say, what people do. They show up on time, they don't. They do what they say they're going to do, they don't. They say something that might be hurtful. They're not thoughtful, in a way, or unfortunately, maybe thoughtful. And intended to hurt,
They really thought about it and it hurt.
Yeah, both ways hurt. But, one is a little bit more malice. You just control your own reactions and your own, if you don't let those things get inside your head and trigger a chemical release, which then gets you an emotion. And then that's harder to, you have to undo all that dope your brain makes and squirts out around your body.
So
all that
lizard brain getting to us.
It's letting that lizard brain start running around, and nobody wants to be a lizard. Well, Paul, great. You're close by. You're on the West Coast. You're up in the Seattle area. I love the name Sound Financial Group, for the company. And I think that's clever. That's intentional. And, and I'm a guy that really loves intention. Tell us a little bit about how did you end up where you're at? What's a little bit of your background, your story?
Well, my background is a little bit silly in how I got into the industry. When I was a young man, I saw Charlie Sheen's movie, Navy SEALs. I must have been 11 or 12. And I thought, man, I'm going to be a Navy SEAL. And I got books on it. had read up on it. And basically all I did with my time from the age of about 12 until 18 is all I did was learn about the military, or I would do physical training, or I would learn about finance, because what I wanted to do was be able to go to the Navy for 20 years, come out with a pension and a bunch of money because I had invested well. And in that journey, the Navy SEALs used to have a requirement that past age 13, if you had had an asthma attack, you could not be in the Navy SEALs. So I had had a couple of asthma attacks past age 13 that I hid from my parents so they wouldn't take me to the hospital, so that I wouldn't have it on my record.
Smart move.
But as I got old enough to take the ASVAB and all of that and go get recruited, they changed the rule to no asthma ever. And then I was like, I don't want to lie.
You can't lie.
And so I ended up telling the recruiter, like, hey, I have had asthma. It's in my records. There's no getting away from it. And, he wished me well.
Dang.
Now my buddies who did go into the SEALs and, we met in business later, they're all like, we all had asthma. You should have just come on in. So because all I had was this finance as a background, with some entrepreneurship and having owned a little business in high school and early college, I only knew about finance. So I started an internship with a financial firm when I was 18, and then turned that after 18 months into a full-time career. And I dropped out of college then, because this was college in the late 90s when professors were teaching, you can get 18% year over year rates of return in a good growth mutual fund. And I would ask, I'd raise my hand and, hey, I've got a bunch of the licenses that people are going to get when they graduate. If I tell people more than 12%, I think I go to jail.
I'm not 100% sure, but I think I'm in trouble.
Yep. And that professor said, the regulators, they just haven't caught up to the new economy. And as a result, I went, I don't know what's going on here, but I've got to get out and get some better learning. And so then I went out after that. I didn't want to learn from the financial institutions. I didn't want to learn from the traditional finance and colleges. So I kind of spent about 40 grand a year for about 10 years traveling the country to learn from the people that won't teach for free, for a mutual fund company. So that kind of began my journey in kind of building a financial philosophy. It's a little different.
So you were going around working, taking some kind of a low job just to get inside a firm and learn, or paying money to learn?
Still running my business. I was just writing checks of $40,000 a year. And some years when you're in your early 20s, it was like those were on credit cards, and it wasn't turned out to be a great investment myself, but it would have been better if I'd had the cash. But after kind of growing, and then got to where I was making pretty good income and working, 3 and 4 days a week when I was 25, and really took control of my life. And then that's just kind of continued to parlay into what is Dow Sound Financial Group.
That's amazing. What a fun journey.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting when you were compelled. I mean, it's a great sign, right? When you're compelled to tell the truth, right? What's your path? And really realizing, okay, I skirted the rules professionally, and now it's really hard. I can't do this one.
No, I got to tell you, I've seen people who have had little breaks in their integrity in their business, and it just comes back to bite them in all the worst possible ways.
It does eventually, right? It's a crack. What were you when you were on the beach with the Navy SEAls? Did you realize that you were? But when you paid, apparently you probably also paid money for that.
Yeah. Paid to get abused by these men.
Yeah, and I'm sure it wasn't cheap either. It was real. It was real money. Did you think, thank goodness I didn't do this profession, like as a real career, or did you have some regrets when you're sitting there?
That's a really good question. I think I dealt with that. This is kind of funny because when you have that much of your young life focused on one thing you think you're going to do that you end up not doing, it didn't hit me until right before I was 34, turning 35. At that time that was the oldest you could be to be in a special
go in.
operations.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like conceivably, I mean, granted, I don't know if I'm the human that could make it as a Navy SEAL. One of my buddies who's a Navy SEAL talked about talking to a bunch of professional athletes. And he's like, yeah, just open up with, hey, I understand you guys are a bunch of, you can feel bad about yourself because you couldn't be a Navy SEAL. So you had to take on professional sports. Like it's this. So I don't know if I would have made it. But when I talk to my friends who did, I'm even more thankful because their bodies are just not the same. There's nobody I know who's a special operator that is not in a position that they're dealing with some breakdowns in their body for the rest of their life. And so for that, I'm sad that I didn't get the opportunity to do all the cool things that you get to do in that kind of command. But by the same token, it's also a huge blessing because I actually have the opportunity to, not have my knees be shot.
Yeah. Well, you read, listen to David Goggins is that famous Navy SEAL, and you just, you hear his story of basically he had fractures in his legs, and he would literally duct tape a cast. He would every morning he'd wake up at like 3:30 and make a fake cast out of duct tape and socks so he could finish the course. It's just he's got to be broken. I mean, I would imagine his body is a bit abused.
Even other Navy SEALs think that guy's crazy. That's when you've got some that he is. That man is, having seen his interviews and he gives me hope for if I'm ever in a situation where I have to push beyond what I think my red line is that guy's going to be echoing in my ears.
Yeah, that is so true. That he posted not, that was maybe a year ago or so. He was talking about some ultra marathon he ran on, some crazy race. And at some point he took a wrong turn for like 5 miles. Then he turned around.
Running 5 miles is longer than most humans will run ever in their lives, and it was just a wrong turn for him, and he still had to track it back and finish the race
and finish some sort of like 50-mile race, right? And you just and he's they have a video of him when he was back on the right road. He was swearing and cursing, and he was just saying basically, no choice. I got to keep going. I think they closed the race on him. Like it was already nighttime, and he was just like, F the world. You don't stop. You don't give up. Life is like this. And it was just really a recap. It was really beautiful because you can't make that up. Like you would think he would actually do this on purpose because he's that kind of guy, but he would never lie about something like that. So, it was an accident, it's real, and it's the real human. Imagine emotionally how badly you would, in my previous life, my younger, I would have let that just get in my head so badly. That would just put me off. The chemical dump would happen. You just would have a hard time recovering from that mentally. You just be so upset with yourself. And this guy was just like, that's not how it works.
Yep.
The goal is the operation, the commitment, stuff happens along the way, and you just keep going. Even if it's a giant mistake, don't give up.
It's a short saying, but the only way out is through is true more often than people would like to believe.
Yeah, the only way out is through.
Yeah, so it's like the only way out of the fire, you got to run through the fire. The only way out of the snowstorm is you got to go through the snowstorm. The only way to get out of a physical altercation in the street is you got to go through that other human. And the only way to deal with that business situation in front of you is you got to sit in it. You can't hide from it. You got to get through the other side of that conversation. And I think that those are all equally it's not a palatable thing for most people to think about, is the amount of difficulty and hard work that it takes to get to the other side, which doesn't mean it's physical capacity, but it might be, to your point, like the emotional.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, and then how you balance, because I'm not, as you might guess, so much one of those people that really comes alongside and puts her arm around you and all that, but I will help enable you to fight what you're fighting.
Right. Yeah.
But my enablement is also going to probably include some feedback about who you are when you're showing trying to solve this. And as my business partners told me, the most difficult part about Paul's feedback is he's right. And it's always the most sensitive thing he's going to point to that nobody else talks to you about. And so now I'm just very careful about who I give feedback to.
Yeah, especially if it's in your DNA to be truthful and honest, and observant. It's not everybody can take it. I think it's breaking it down to like you were saying in the business side of getting into these troubles and difficulties, sit in it, and I think breaking it down into palatable pieces. Right. Well, how low can you break this down, and how small to just kind of do the first step, right? Take that first step and then, kind of claw your way out. Do you work with before I ask that question, let's do a jar question.
Oh, we're going to get a jar.
So this is from the Jar podcast. I traveled around the country, went to 96 cities, interviewed 323 people with this big jar of 444 questions. So, question for Paul from the jar, and this will be interesting because I'm sure
I had to post on our live stream. He's going to the jar.
He's going to the jar. Is there someone you no longer speak to because you got angry with them?
Yep. Now, I don't no longer speak to them because I was angry with them. Yeah. I no longer speak to them because I watched the amount of fallout they created in the relationship with me, which then made me aware that, like, being able to zoom out and go, oh, you've done that with a bunch of people. This isn't new to me. This is me thinking I was immune from that mess you would cause. Like, have you ever had that one friend where you see them mistreat a bunch of other people and you're like, well, they don't do that with me. Yeah. And then they do. And you're like, oh. So I mean, what they did made me angry, but the reason that I don't talk to them now is, a new guy started with us. I'm a terrible swimmer, like in real life. I mean, I can swim pretty good, but I'm not like competing in a triathlon. But a lot of my life that gives me a lot of autonomy and freedom, especially with my time, is because I'm an efficient swimmer when it comes to life and business.
I love that. Great analogy.
So when somebody looks like they're bringing a lot of baggage that's going to create a lot of drag in the relationship or drag on my life because I'm in relationship with you, it's like we just push the eject button. My wife and I both, we just tend not to have very many relationships with people where their lives entail drama that can drip onto ours.
It's hard. It's interesting. It's a great point, right? And it takes time to learn that as an adult. And I think this is why we start with so many friends in life, right? In high school and college, post-college, with the kids, the families and the friends. And, you develop these different sets of relationships, but over time, they kind of go to the side, right? You kind of pick and choose who's your tribe as you get older. And that's an interesting way to kind of trim your tribe, right? Is who's got who creates those situations that I don't want to have in my life.
And at one point, Ken, I denoted who should be in my life or not be in my life based upon, like their career capacity, or is this the kind of person that deals with similar problems that I deal with in work? And that was my shared background. And now I find I just have, for me at least, figuring out a little more about what's important in life. My closest relationships are at church. And it's not like we have a church founded relationship where we're always talking church stuff, but it's the guys that I'm in a Bible study with. They're the same guys I'll go shooting with. And those are the same folks where we go camping with our families together. And these guys have nothing to do with me career-wise. They're not business owners. They don't own a financial firm. And my wife for a long time called me a walking contradiction because, when I was younger, I had horses, listened to country music, also gangster rap. And I drove a brand new white BMW when I wasn't pulling the horse trailer with the old Ford pickup truck.
Oh yeah, there's some incongruency there.
That's it. But even in this industry, it's like it's normally very white collar, very polished. People look like should be in a men's magazine looking at their watch for men that are in my industry. And yet, when I get done with this, later today, I'll be pounding T-posts in the ground to build a small garden with logs, like a raised bed for my daughter.
Yeah.
And I enjoy doing, running a chainsaw to be able to get that work done as much as I do sitting here being with you or being with a client. And because of that, that also means like there's a lot of the white collar guys who really like their wine tasting in super fancy restaurants. And that's just not who I am. So I look at myself more like good help to really wealthy families. Like my family and I make a great income. We don't live like our income would allow us to. So I just look at myself as the hired help. Your butler is never going to try to keep up with you or buy your same car you have or house you have.
Right.
So don't expect me to try to live the life you're leading because we might make a similar amount of money, but I make some very different choices. And if what you're looking for in your financial advisor, the person who helps you with money, is that they know wine as well as you, that is not going to be us.
Yeah. I know how to hunt. I know how to camp, how to fish. I know how to use I can use a chainsaw really well. Tell us a little bit more about what you do. What are you and your partner carved out in life and the service you're kind of providing for people?
So we own an independent registered investment advisory firm. So that means that we help people manage money, plan for their future, retirement, or as we like to say, building financial independence for the sake of a work optional lifestyle.
Okay, great.
In doing that, we do it a little bit different in little ways. Like we charge a fee up front. So clients have the total, if they might want to have us manage their money, like we can design the plan. They can go build it themselves, or they could build it with a longtime friend from high school. But if they really like their relationship with us while we're in the coaching and design meetings over the first 3 to 4 months, they can also implement with us. Total option for them.
Great approach.
And then my favorite part about what we've done in terms of structure is when we have a first meeting with somebody, we do not ask them a single financial question. We say, this is your chance to find out who we are so that you can figure out if you want to meet with us again. The next meeting is they apply to become a client. And then we do an interview to see if like, are these kind of people we're going to get along with for a couple, 3 decades? Am I going to enjoy seeing you on my calendar all the time? Do I think you're going to enjoy seeing me on your calendar for the next 20, 30 years? And so as we kind of parse through that in the application process, they pay a fee up front, but we refund that fee for any reason in the first 6 months of the relationship. It could literally be, hey, I saw you on that podcast with Ken and I didn't like how long your beard was. I want my money back. Fine.
Yeah.
And we're the first firm in Washington that ever got that approved by regulators.
Oh, you need to get that. You need to get that approved to refund. To refund a fee. Is that a rebate? What is that? What did it fall?
Yeah, that's what they're worried about. Is it could cross over into rebating or otherwise. And so, what we did is I just framed it up as, and this kind of speaks to maybe something that would be helpful to the podcast audience. We had this enormous government bureaucracy called, the financial regulators of the state of Washington. And we put in the first request. They're like, no, we can't do that. So then I went through their website. I went through all of their mission statement. Everything they said was important to them. And front and center was protecting clients. Then I found another firm that's a national firm who has done a refund policy. Okay. I was able to pull from their here's the thing, guys. You're a bureaucracy. I get it. You don't ever want to be the first people to do anything. These people already did it. And the reason I think this would be helpful is here's what your mission statement says about protecting consumers. Yes. What would protect them more than a full refund? I've lived in an industry that has always made the clients risk. And I don't want to do that. I think this should be risk-free financially for clients to pay me. And they approved of it.
It is interesting. I've worked with a lot of regulators overseas, especially young regulating, departments, almost departments that hardly existed.
Oh yeah. I've heard that in some of your other stories.
Yeah. And so one of the things we would do is we would fly them around. So we'd send them to another country that had, and create a regulatory network, and it was good and bad. It had, in markets where a large corporate insurance company could take advantage in a way, right? of the market, especially new markets, so certainly, you got shareholders and you want to drive revenue. And so it's just this balance between, between the corporate machinery that wants something and doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's a great, it came to, in some ways we used to say it came back to bite us a little bit because we ended up with regulators in newer markets that all quickly became very advanced in their thinking. And to the detriment, we talked earlier, to the detriment ultimately sometimes to the clients, because
Yes.
the regulations come so hard and so fast that for somebody like yourself, or in a more developing market, somebody earning a good salary would never get the time of day from a financial planner because the financial planner needs X amount of money to justify the relationship. They have to earn
Yeah.
an income from that. And, it's a real shame that regulation had to get as good as it is, because of some
Hmm.
bad actors. And in
Yes.
that process, we've carved out a niche where it takes a certain amount of income to get somebody like you to focus on somebody because your experience.
Yeah.
So
And
that happened in other markets as well, even developing markets. It's a quandary, and I don't have an answer for it.
yeah. And I think it's, I've always looked at it slightly differently, but I think regulation is a big deal. Is unfortunately the lowest, as a population, the lowest
Yes.
income, lowest net worth tend to get the highest fee financial products. And
Well,
the
yeah,
reason they get the
yeah,
highest fee financial products, very expensive for companies to operate in that space, and it's
uh,
risky. And so they have to have more revenue to be able to offset the risk. And I would,
it's real.
it's one of the things people ask us, like, how much does somebody have to have in investments or whatever? I say we tend to work with Henry. High earner, not rich yet. That's Henry.
I
Henry
love
can be
that.
a man
I
or
like
Henry could
Henry.
be a woman, but we work with Henry and, in an attempt to get them to the point that they can be financially independent and have a work optional lifestyle. But we don't judge people on their assets because you might have a lot of assets and I'm going to look and it might not be ethical because I'm not going to improve your situation much. It
Yes.
might not
Yeah.
be ethical for me to charge you.
Yeah.
On the flip side, it might have a household making 150, and we have seen this. We have one of my favorite clients. We actually have an episode about him on our podcast. He was willing to be interviewed. Never made more than I think 80. Maybe he made 80,000 in like the last 4 or 5 years. He's early retired at
Wow.
55
Wow.
with a place in Italy and a place in the States. And he's working on citizenship now. He's got a relative that was Italian, so he's able to get dual citizenship. And he's doing all of that with less than $100,000 a year income. And most people wouldn't see that as possible. And he does have my time because he just figured out how to say no to a lot of stuff that people said yes to. And he kept his money. And he just
Genius.
slowly invested it over the year. No big real estate stuff. He didn't, no groundbreaking anything, just good, solid hard work for many years. And unfortunately, though, there aren't very many schools aren't teaching kids the importance of it. I'm actually speaking this next week to 2 homeschool groups just
Oh,
about money management, finance, all of that. I don't know. I've never heard of our public schools in our area doing any like real financial education to kids. I
yeah.
didn't
It's
experience any in high school.
no, you never learn how to use a checkbook, how to balance a bank account, none of that stuff. I mean, even in college, I'm
Miss
not sure I learned it.
Mrs. Anderson in 7th grade, if I don't even know if she's still alive. She was 62 years old at the time. 2 things I remember about her. She showed us all how to balance a checkbook. She says, you guys will not know math and not know how to balance a checkbook. And she taught us how to save for a car to get a new car every 10 years because that's what she did. And she
Alice,
got one of her new cars while I was in J High.
teacher Alice. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
financial in Asia for Peru. When I was with Peru, we called it financial literacy.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Was the catchphrase we used, and in recruiting agents, that was the core, kind of the core theme was, and a lot of our clients, our prospects for agents were women, 40-year-old,
Mm-hmm.
35 to 40-year-old women, 40 something, 50, 35 to about 50 was our sweet spot. And these were women who kind of either mostly in Asia. A lot of times they managed the finances of the house. So they understood the finances. They were the epicenter of money coming in and out of the family for sure. Even if they didn't totally control it, they were the epicenter still. And they were looking for ways to earn extra money. But they certainly didn't have the education. Most of them didn't have the education for it. But man, through some insurance education, learning how to pass your exam, learning how to plan for others, you learn how to plan for yourself.
Yes.
Absolute financial literacy. And, that's one of the great things about insurance. A lot of people become agents. They don't stick it out, but they walk away with a pretty solid education on finances.
I would totally align with that. And your story about spouses reminds me, this is many years ago. I was recruiting a woman to come in and be an advisor with us. And she said to me, but everybody who's in this industry is men, and men make the decisions in most of these households. How am I going to make it as a woman? I said, I can prove to you in 30 seconds that you wear the financial pants in your family. And she goes, what? And I knew her husband, all of that. And he's
an
alpha guy,
Right.
And
you're going to set this up.
She doesn't believe it. And I go, yeah, it's easy. I said, let's say Ryan went out and he got a car, $900 a month payment. He didn't mention it to you before he came home. I said, is he keeping the car? She's like, not a chance. I said, okay. There you go.
Yeah,
I said, done. There you go. I said, maybe women don't make all the financial decisions. They were sure as heck unmake them. And she's like, and she ended up accepting the job offer that day because she was like, I get it now. And I think that one other thing that I notice a lot is lots of times one spouse will sort of quote unquote handle the finances. And to anybody listening, I would say, don't let that happen in your house. You shouldn't let that happen anymore in your house. As let's say one of the spouses says, hey, I'm not good with little kids. I'm better with teenagers. Why don't you handle the kids till they're like 13 and then I'll really come in. But until then, they're really I'm not very interested. That would be bananas.
I love that.
Bananas because the kids are definitely going to be in your future. There's no question I'm going to have my kids in my future. Guess what? Your money's in your future too. No different. And
great analogy.
Relate to it better when there's more commas and zeros later in life. You just won't. Oh, by the way, lots of times it's women. Most of the time, the woman outlives the man. And I have had the distinct displeasure to have to be the man explaining to a 67-year-old woman who has lost her husband how a mutual fund works.
Oh,
they have mutual funds. They have investment. They don't know what a stock or a bond is. And if you're sitting here listening to this, like you happen to trip over this live stream or podcast, and now you're listening going, I'm that spouse. Get those meetings. Get in those meetings. You need to have a relationship with that person. Your spouse had all the relationship and they get hit by the number 4 bus. What are you going to do? Like get to know somebody newly with hopefully there's enough money planned that you're going to be okay. Like your money will absolutely inevitably be a part of your future unless you die early. So if you're not planning on dying early, learn about your money and get it straight.
It's a powerful message. Yeah. You get hit by the number 4.
Yeah. It ends quick that way.
Yeah. It's usually over fast. We had I love the way you said that because it reminds me in Hong Kong that we had the number buses and the number 8 and the number 4. Number 8X, you never wanted to get in front of the X because that was express. And, that guy wasn't slowing down for anybody. And let me tell you, those Hong Kong bus drivers, those guys are Grand Prix qualified drivers. They got these double wide British buses, these fat square buses and these blind hairpin turns around the island, with one side's a cliff, the other side's a mountain wall. And, when the two of them come at each other around a corner, you're in the front seat. You just close your eyes.
It reminds me of the Harry Potter magic bus. I don't remember what episode of Harry Potter it is, but I was just watching it with the kids last night. It's like swings around these corners all super fast. I'm like, yep, that's like a bus in a third world country.
That is absolutely the bus. Those guys, those drivers. I mean, never let anybody tell you Asian drive can't drive, man. I have seen it. These dudes they can outmaneuver anybody with one hand. They're out there and no sign of anything on their face, just normal business stuff.
Yeah,
Literally
they're doing
6
it. They're
inches.
making that run 3 times that day.
And they probably pass each other at the same corner every time, right? Just, I'd be a little bit nervous. But just amazing bus drivers, all over Asia, just from India all the way up to Tokyo, just qualified F1 people.
Yeah, I think if I got myself a base jumping parachute, I would really like to ride on one of those buses, but I need to be on the top level with the ability to hop out on its way down.
I used to give if you ever go to Hong Kong, if you're ever listening, from Stanley to Central, get on the 8X, and it's and get in the top, go upstairs and get in the top left seat, the front left seat, grab the heck bar, and it's windows all around, and you get a Disneyland ride for 20 minutes into the city, because there's some cliffs you're looking over where it is frightening. Absolutely. And those guys are fun. Let's grab another question. And I've got a couple more questions for you, but I want to come back to those. So another question from the jar. Oh, this is a good one. So get a little backwards back into some of your DNA. So a question for Paul from the jar. Who taught you how to love?
Ooh, that is a good one. Who taught me how to love? So I think I'll give you a first blush at learning to love, and then like the more mature version.
Sure.
My dad. So my dad was a stay-at-home dad way before it was cool. My mom was a primary breadwinner when I was growing up.
Love that.
And so I just had a lot of time with my dad all day, come home from school, dad's there. He would sometimes run some other little businesses on the side. But he was always there when I came home. All summer I would go help him run whatever business he had at the time. Be like a really, really bad little small laborer when I was little. But what it was an appropriate and fearful love. That my dad would stand in front of a bullet for me, that he would lay down his life for me, but he wasn't going to tolerate misbehavior from me. And like for instance, the whole reason I never did drugs as a young man, I thought my dad would kill me. Now, as an adult, I don't think like now, but I was like, no question, my dad will kick my butt up and down this street.
Yeah, just not an option for me.
Like I remember talking back to my dad at the kitchen table that leaned back like this, and I said something smart to my mom. I just remember his shoulder moved. And then by the time I shook off the blackness, I'm still in my chair, but I was like, couldn't see anything for a moment. He was already leaned back in his chair. I got my senses about me. He looked at me and said, now you're never going to talk to my wife like that again. I was like 13. Stuck with me. So that is the kind of that beginning. And then what I would say is over time, having gone deeper in my faith, I look at Christ's love for us, that we, and I'll just speak for myself. I have had years of my life where I've walked all over the tenets of the Bible or how it would be called to live morally. And yet Christ is right there for me to be able to get my life on track and live in a way that's as biblically close as I, as a fallen human being, can. And that he's right there to put his arms around me again. And now what I'm learning to do is like loving my enemies, and that doesn't mean I have to have them over for dinner, but it does mean I can't walk around with hate in my heart for them.
Yeah.
And so that's like where I'm learning my next level of love and care, because, Bible says something to the effect where Jesus says, like, what's the big deal? So you like the people that you like. Even the worst human beings in the world do that. My people are called to love their enemies. And so I would say I'm learning that one now. I don't think I got it. But I have some enemies that might be listening to this. Just know I love you. Don't call me.
Just don't. Yeah, don't. But you still probably help them financially if they ask some questions, which is funny, right? You'd still take the call professional.
Actually, even a personal level, somebody who might be my enemy could ask me for help, and I would help them. My key that I have to do is make sure that me getting that close to you doesn't compromise me or my family's success, safety. Just like helping a homeless person on the street. I'm one of those people that will pull over when somebody's got a flat tire. I'm somebody like that kind of thing, like in the middle of nowhere, drive somebody to go get gas. But you can, the more dangerous you are, like when I do that, I am armed to the teeth, but the more dangerous I am, the more helpful I can be.
It's true. It's true. So, the more, it's absolutely true.
So that's kind of how I view that, is that if I can serve them, if I can help them, even if they might otherwise choose to act against me, as long as I'm not enabling their actions against me, I'm okay. I can help them as long as it doesn't cost anything that's important to me.
Yeah, I wrote a book called Dear God, and the letters on acceptance kind of cover that, which is, I can accept who you are, how you've gotten here. I can accept your story. I can, but I don't have to agree with it or
I heard you talk about that before.
Follow you.
Love that.
Yeah. I mean, totally accepting. I've learned to become accepting where I probably wasn't. And then even acceptance kind of grows into compassion. It's kind of a strange, this linear thing where, you can't be really truly compassionate if you're not accepting. But if you find acceptance in your heart and in a process, almost, it can be a process, it doesn't have to be a loving heart thing. It can be just simply a process. And from that, you end up with compassion.
Yeah.
You become compassionate for people, and it's and not in a looking down way, but in a human way, because we're all kind of these flaws, we're all kind of trying to figure it out. None of us have figured, none of us have really figured it out.
I was down in your neck of the woods for an entrepreneurs organization conference, and I was kind of staying, I don't know, I don't remember the roads, but it was kind of near the Vancouver Portland border, kind of near the river. There's a really nice RV park. So I just took my RV down to these meetings, but it left me sort of driving through Portland for 3 or 4 days of meetings. And one thing I got that I'd never gotten before is I really felt terrible for the people that are strung out on drugs and they can't hardly keep their pants pulled up while they're walking down the street. And I don't mean that in like these people aren't meaning to do it that way. It's like their pants are just too big and their belt is broken. Like it wasn't a style. And that's where I think it is tough, because I've heard it said once, if you just tell people the truth, you're looked at as an uncompassionate a-hole. And if you only show people love, then you're only affirming whatever activity they choose to be in. So the difficult balance is being able to speak truth in love to those situations where I can be compassionate, and it may not feel good to tell somebody the truth because I'm empathetic to where they're at. But also, if I don't tell them the truth, I'm just going to leave them where they are, not having been changed whatsoever from me being in their life.
Also, compassion is to be truthful.
Yep.
Yeah.
And sometimes I found my compassion is best expressed by me staying quiet.
I'm compassionate enough to know that if I speak my truth, that you may find that disturbing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
well, only because
and maybe not ready to accept it. Maybe not. Also understanding where people are. Not everybody is ready for your message. They might not be in that place, especially if you've been on this journey.
A guy you'd probably enjoy having on your show is a friend of mine. He's a former Navy SEAL sniper named Eric Davis. Okay. And I will never forget something he said. Like, we were in a meeting together and I was like, so-and-so was totally wrong. Like, I knew you were right. You knew you were right. Why didn't you say anything? And he just said, yeah, there wasn't space for it. He's like, just like in this car, we don't have space to play a basketball game. There was not the space in that conversation to do that. He's like, so which this would shock you being a sniper. He's like, I can wait for months in conversations with people until the space is there for me to give that bit of feedback.
Wow.
And I'll never, I remember we were actually, it's funny enough, we were driving for some reason between, I think, Claremont and Temecula. For whatever reason, I just remember where I was at on this long, boring road. And when he had that conversation, that's forever I've kept in mind. And I notice all the times that I did stay quiet and wait for the space to be there to say the thing. And not just say the thing because it was right. Or I thought it was.
Oh, and that feels good in the moment. Like if you say it and you know you're right, it feels good.
It's so good. But it's almost as good as canceling plans.
It is like, oh, I got 2 hours now. Yeah, it feels good, but it is a cheap shot in a way.
I think it's John Mulaney has a stand-up bit that's like heroin, canceling plans. They're real close in terms of the instant payoff, but it doesn't lead to a very good life.
Oh. I got a little wild circus going on behind me.
I hear it, man. I love hearing those kids back there.
Oh, man.
I had to build this building. It's a 10 by 20 fully soundproof building outside my house. So even when the kids are in the yard, like thunderstorms doesn't matter. Nobody hears it in here.
I love it. I love it. My daughter and son-in-law have an ADU. You know, in the cities they call these ADUs, additional dwelling units, which is you know, really, you know, those are politicians coming up with some really amazing when they're marketing geniuses as well. It's a great little 10 by 10 spot. Just, you know, a crane dropped it over the fence onto some pylons, and it's a great working space. So it's a great, it's an office for them to go outside and conduct business in a safe, you know, a safe place.
Indeed.
Let's get one more question. Then I'll probably got a question for you. You know, this has been pretty good. Ooh, a little introspective now, Paul. So we got another question from the jar, and this is another great one. What's holding you back from being the person you want to be? And you seem like you're pretty close to the human you want to be. So it's an interesting question for me. The jar's poking.
Yeah, I think for me, I absolutely, but I think I know what it is so I think the thing that I've done with my faith for a long, long time is I've been consistent, not rigorous. And so what I mean by that is like I've read the Bible maybe 17 times cover to cover, something like that.
Okay.
But not studied. Not
right.
What does that mean? Not in a long time anyway. And you know, the realization of something like very small is just reading last night and reading I like the Bibles have a lot of historical context, etc. So in the footnote, you know, it talks about the way that the military basically chased Christians out of, you know, their homeland, but not the apostles. The apostles weren't chased out. And I was like, why is that? Well, they're Hellenistic Jews. The Hellenistic Jews were chased out, but for whatever reason, the original sort of Hebrews Jews that followed Christ didn't. Well, that means they only chased off Hellenistic Jews were the ones that spoke Greek. So literally the people that were chased out of Israel, the founding homeland of Jesus and where all this started to make this a worldwide phenomenon was because only a particular sect of Jews who followed Jesus were driven out. And it was the Greek speaking, which meant anywhere there was a Roman road, they could preach the gospel. So it's something like that is so minor, but so deep that just came from a little bit of reading the Bible and reflection and conversation. And frankly, I think if I had a lot more of that in my life, what would happen to me is much like David getting chipped away, right, by Michelangelo slowly over time. David was always in there. I had to remove what wasn't him. I feel like God keeps chipping at my heart and wanting me to dig in and study him the way I have finance, etc. And the deeper I go in that relationship, the better every other relationship seems to go. So I would say it's just to be as open and vulnerable as I can is I I have read the word of God and I've let it in, but I have never, I haven't in a long time studied. I kind of have rested on my laurels on that front.
Yeah, interesting. It's a big weekend. I mean, it's a big Christian weekend coming up. I mean, tonight, today, I mean, even, talk about Good Friday, but Thursday is also obviously a powerful day because knowing what's going to happen to you.
Yeah.
And preparing for that. But nobody else really knowing and recognizing it, right? Everybody else a little bit still missing the point.
Well, and it's but just to be in a spot where, I don't know, like I would love if my default reaction in a tough situation is how, I say I get this most of the time, but like, how could I react to this horrible thing in a way, somebody cutting you off in traffic, disagreement with a checker, whatever it is. Could I disagreement with the manager at a hotel that is a 5-star hotel that screwed something up? If I finish that conversation, could I invite them to church? Would I behave in a way that they would be like, oh, that makes sense. He would invite me to church after the way. Or if I invited them to church afterward, they'd be like, I can't believe he doesn't burst into flames walking in one way. He just talked to me. So I think that's my gap of growth that's just super present for me right now.
I love that. That's it's an interesting. And the question was, the jar always asks the right question. It's somehow I really do believe that it's got some mystical powers.
Providentially appointed.
It in a way it is. The questions. I like to say the questions aren't mine. I don't remember writing a lot of the questions. I was definitely in the muse space.
Yeah.
And it was not a task of love. It wasn't even a labor of love. It was some sort of torture that I had to go back because I'd finished the book. I'd written the book, and then I got the idea to use the book to create questions.
Oh, yeah.
And so to go back and just see your book after you've done, edited it and done everything else 100 times. I didn't want to ever see the book for 100 years. And then to be forced to sit down and go through every page deeply from a different viewpoint with a different set of eyes on. And then the jars are all created by hand from a friend, somebody that I met 20 years before I needed them. When somebody said, oh, you should call the show The Jar, or I picture, they didn't say that. They said, I picture a big jar in front of the guest, this big bespoke was the word. He's a British gentleman. He used the word bespoke. And when he used that word, I immediately knew who I needed to call. And only later did I realize I met this guy 20 years before for this purpose.
Yeah.
No other purpose. Like the relationship was it was interesting and like I knew him forever. We were like brothers, but it was shallow. It wasn't purposeful.
Yeah.
And I tried to put purpose behind it after I met him, even after I'd left the country. He was in Bali. And it was only 20 years later that I went, boom, oh my God. And then it took me 2 years later after the fact that I went, no, this is why I met him.
Yep.
This is why I met him.
I think there is, it's one of the reasons why I encourage so many people to give to whatever their church is, like it's a regular practice, because it focuses your mind on the outcomes that God's creating in your life. And there are all kinds of things that you go through that are bad. And if you're not saying to yourself, I'm living my life in a way that I know God has something great in store for me. He has plans to prosper me, not to hurt me. But I can only do that if I'm investing time, energy, money into that relationship with my faith, such that I'd be like, oh, it would make sense that this, but something like that too is like, gosh, the boss upstairs laid down some steps for you 20 years before you knew you needed them.
It's crazy.
And it is. And it does sound crazy, and it's amazing. And it's also amazing how often it happens. And all it takes is to kind of remove the blinders that maybe get set on us by social media or whatever devices we have and go, wait, I think God's still involved.
The more you lean into these signs and you're open to them, I think the more they're there. And putting the interpretation on it, it required me to put a lens on that sequence of events, if you will, right? It required me
Yes.
to put a different lens on there and to see it as for what it was,
Yep.
truly those stepping stones and going, holy cow, I was off the path. And then I crossed the path and then, okay, I'm on I think I'm on the path for a moment. And then, you fall
Yeah.
off the path and things kind of,
And then you look back and find I was on the path the whole time.
actually, I was on the path the whole time.
Yeah.
And you're right where you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
This is the
Only in retrospect do you ever really get that. But to even, let's say somebody's listening right now, they have zero connection to faith, whatever.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like, just have faith in the fact that nearly everybody who's walked a difficult road that you might be walking right now, they all look back and saw amazing things that happened in their life as a result of that difficulty. And like, you can count, like if I drop my mouse, it's going to fall. Like gravity, you can count on that.
Yes.
So that makes it a lot easier. Romans 5:3 says, I'm badly quoting Bible verses here.
You go.
That,
you go.
We rejoice in our suffering because suffering brings endurance. Endurance brings character, and character brings hope. And that without the suffering, you don't get the opportunity to become the character that you will become, or have the character you should have. So so it's like when I'm doing stuff that's really hard and people say, how's it going? My friends know me well enough now to say, man, I'm rejoicing, which means I did some tough-ish today, but bring it.
I love that.
If I just do some tough stuff every day, it doesn't seem so tough because we don't get, this sounds silly, but for me, it sounds deeper every time I say it, is that life will not get easier, but you can get harder.
Yeah, life doesn't get easier.
Yeah, but we all get harder. You deal with situations better now than you did 20 years ago. And so does everybody else listening. But
absolutely.
We may not have intentionally gotten harder. We might have just toughened up like innately, like calluses on our skin.
Yeah.
But the realization of like, wait, no, that did make me stronger. So this is going to make me stronger too.
Yeah.
I rejoice.
So many of the people that I interviewed had some really tough stories on the jar. 300. You interview 323 people, and especially in the selection process, of offering up that story platform for people. So people who have been on a rough road step forward, and they want to shout from the top of the mountain, "This is my story."
Yes.
And I'm so lucky, so blessed, man, to have so many people step forward and share without, no regard to the fact that they're laying everything out on the table, right? Showing they're opening up the kimono all the way and telling, they're all the scars and all the stuff. Nobody would ever change their story.
That's what I was just going to ask. Every one of them, right? No matter how bad it was, it's like, it's mine, damn it. Like, it got me here.
It's mine, damn it. And I wouldn't change a thing. And I'm like, not even that part. Nope. Not that. Like the other part. Nope. And these are hard. Like, these are things you would not want to live through. You would not be exposed to. You wouldn't want to have that memory.
You would never choose it.
They'd never choose it. But they own it. And it's just so admirable. Humans are amazing.
And that they wouldn't change it, that they take the difficulty on, that they see value it brought to their lives maybe years later.
Yes.
And like that is that we rejoice in our suffering because it always brings the endurance, which brings character, which brings hope. Because now the next time I go through something, and the thing that I most pity for people is that they could be in a position where they don't want to lean in and get through the difficulty. And the problem is they quit before they had a chance to succeed, or they walk away before they had a chance to succeed. So they don't get the hope for the next time. Right? The hope is the payoff.
Yeah.
Like, that, hey, I got through all this and I was okay. So like when people go to my gym, and not my gym, but the gym I go to, and they get absolutely destroyed in the workout.
Yes.
Their first time. It's their first time doing it. Maybe they haven't worked out in years, and they'll be like, I never want to do that again. But if I can get them to go for 3 months, and then they see what they're now capable of versus what they used to be capable of, they now have hope in the future.
Yeah.
But it's all because of it created endurance, created character, created hope in the future.
Yeah. It's powerful stuff, right? It's powerful stuff. But any thought, Paul, I mean, the conversation, I'm blown away. It's an hour already. Fantastic conversation. I'm not sure if we had any plans it would go where it went, and it went where it went.
Yeah.
Beautiful, fun.
Well, I got to tell you, I was super excited to be live streamed on LinkedIn. I made a post, made some comments on the post. I've been watching live stream on the other screen.
Oh, on the other screen? Great.
Yeah. I had to have it open and make sure it was working because I had to, like right at the start, I had to figure out, I think this is where I copied the URL to repost it. It happened to work.
I love it.
So,
how about any kind of thoughts, closing thoughts, and maybe spin in there the financial group kind of what you're.
Oh, yeah.
'Cause I think you're doing. I love your approach. I love the one that the philosophical approach you shared with you and your partner, and I think you're doing great stuff.
I would
I think it's beautiful.
Just encourage people, go check out the podcast. You can find it on Sound Financial Group on all your favorite podcasting platforms, on YouTube. But the big thing is to just be taking some action. Even if you have a financial advisor, and let's say you're very, very, you would be one of the most diligent people in the world if from age 45 to 65, you met with that advisor every single year for 2 hours. Okay. You'd be super good. And that is from 45 to 65, 40 hours invested.
Not much.
If you live to age 85, that money needs to last you approximately 275,000 hours. But you only have 40 hours invested in understanding it. Like, I would just encourage everybody out there, you have to be a client of ours, but like maybe listen to our podcast, pick another financial podcast where you are really not getting the coolest new trading thing, but you're learning financial principles. And then you can bounce that off of your team. And if you're pouring into yourself and becoming more financially capable, your financial future will be better. You cannot rely. We tell our clients, do not rely on us to turn out your future. Our job is to be like a guide, right? But like if you got a hunting guide, you better be able to hike up the hills before you get the guide, because he's going to be hindered by your inability to cover hills. But he's still the guide.
Or if he gets eaten by the one lion, you better run faster so the second lion doesn't get you.
That's right. That's right. So that would just be my encouragement for people is we'd be happy if you wanted to follow us on LinkedIn, YouTube, any of the social media stuff. But more importantly, would just be an encouragement to people to be doing something, you and your spouse together, to just pour into yourself with some financial knowledge. I just promise everybody out there, it'll make a difference for you if you spend some of your spare time learning and some of your close friends that you talk to about money, because then you capture the conversation over beer talking about money and the article you both read. And now that starts to accumulate to be a lot more than 40 hours.
Love that. So be a better financial student than you are a Bible study student.
Yes, definitely. Definitely do that.
I had to pull that one out at the last second. Paul, awesome. When I make it up to Washington, up by you, I'll definitely find you for a cup of coffee.
Love to do it. I sure enjoyed this today.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for listening and supporting The Humanist. And you're probably listening to this at this point on the audio podcast. So a lot of other good stuff out there we produce, including Mental Health Today, the JAR podcast. You can find that on all the audio versions as well. Some great conversations. Paul, again, thanks so much, and hang around. I'll see you in 10 seconds. Welcome to the Humanist Podcast. I'm your host, Ken Stearns. Join us on a journey where we unravel the intricacies of workplace dynamics